Hello everyone, this is HR Perspective, and today we have with us Mr. Sahil Nayar. He is the Senior Associate Director of KPMG. So hello Mr. Nayar, thank you so much for doing this with us.
Hi Nishad, thank you so much for having me over.
Yeah, it is an honor, honestly, to actually have you on board and let you impart your knowledge to all the HRs and all the audience which is actually listening to us right now. So thanks for that. And today we'll be talking about the art of saying no in the HR sphere. So, Mr. Nair, when I first, listened to the term or listened to the phrase called, the art of learning to say no, the thing that comes to my mind is HR saying no, or HR's learning actually to say no to the employees when they ask for certain permissions, or the boss, the CEO, when they ask for a certain strategy for helping an employee retention or experience. So, what does that actually implicate? Because it has a lot of meanings, right? So, what does that mean for you?
Sure. So I think Nishad, even before getting into the HR sphere, if you could just take a step back, right, and just think of it as the world at large, we're all human beings, and many a times, many of us have had to say no, right?
Yes, absolutely.
And therefore, just imagine it's one syllable, two alphabets, but yet so difficult to say.
True. Absolutely
And
true.
many a times saying no is not as difficult as wondering what would happen after we say
You
no.
say no. Correct.
And therefore that holds us back, right? And I think what's happened in a country like ours, from the time we've been born and we've been brought up, we've been taught to say yes because saying no is considered as bad or rude or
Yes.
inappropriate, right?
Absolutely.
So अगर कोई कुछ
I
काम करे,
even think that saying no sometimes just saying yes actually is the human nature, because almost everybody these days is a people pleaser, and human beings in general are people pleasers. So I think when you say yes to somebody, it just helps your image get improved in that person's eyes or something of that sort. So we tend to say yes to things that to things which we don't even want to do. So I think that also counts.
yeah, absolutely. And I think you put it very beautifully क्योंकि अगर ना कहोगे तो बुरा लग जाएगा एंड
Correct.
किसी को बुरा नहीं लगाना तो therefore say yes.
Yes.
और वो सबको खुश करने के चक्कर में सबको you keep saying yes to everyone without realizing that invariably because you can't please everybody all the time, you end up saying no. And even if you don't say no, you don't end up delivering. And
Correct.
when you
Yeah.
don't deliver, that is worse because you
Absolutely
said
was.
yes initially.
Yeah. How does this come into HR? Because I've not really heard a lot many people. Actually, I have not heard anybody speak about this. So, what does it mean in HR?
See, I think from a human resources standpoint, it's a very precarious situation to be in for two reasons. One, because as human resources, we are custodians of a lot of confidential information. We are
Correct.
custodians of a lot of confidential discussions that happen. And many a times when you are put in a spot, in a point blank situation to say yes or no, tell me whether this happened or not, or tell me what my compensation is, or tell me is my compensation lower than someone else's compensation. Now, I
Yeah.
think many people who start off their career in the space of human resources, and again, I'm generalizing here, but end up finding it very difficult because of two reasons. One, are they going to be safeguarded in terms of whether they could actually say and give out that information?
Correct.
Or if they can't give out that information, can they say a point blank no? And many a times, the answer lies in the gray
Mm-hmm.
because the answer
Yes.
lies in who is asking for that information. The
Correct.
answer
Yeah.
lies in saying how is sharing of that information contextual to the person who is asking for it, you know, and more importantly, are you maintaining the policies and protocols of the organization when sharing confidential information, right?
Correct.
There
Correct.
there may be a person who's in a position of authority, but is not entitled to that information.
Yeah, he's not supposed to get
Therefore,
that information.
he's not supposed to get that information. And therefore, the question is, how do you say no? Because you
Yes,
may end up hurting the person. The person may use his or her position or chair to really, put you on the back foot.
correct.
And it may not really
Yes,
be easy for junior colleagues. As you grow in
yes,
seniority, you learn how to navigate the system. Or even if there's a
yes,
new joiner who's come into an organization, the person on day one may not know a lot of
correct.
things, how things
Yeah,
operate on the lay of the land. And therefore,
right.
the ability to say no is not just an inherent ability of your own DNA, but also has a huge element of the ecosystem. And how do you operate in that ecosystem?
Okay, that's actually a very good point, because I was thinking about the fact that many times even HR executives, which are at a junior level, tend to have a lot more knowledge than some of the other higher authoritative people in the company, especially when they are a new joinee. I mean, the higher authoritative people who are new joinees. So what happens is that these HR executives cannot actually say no to them when they are asking for certain information, because of course they are at a higher position and they can impact their current position. They are a junior person at the company, so definitely they need to learn to say no, and just turn down somebody who's asking them the certain amount of details which they are not supposed to be knowing.
And while we are discussing about HR here and information being solicited, I think just if we zoom out, there are so many instances where you, I, and the entire world at large finds it difficult to say no.
Yeah, of
And the
course.
reason is because we don't really communicate what we are feeling
Yes.
because we want to maintain that beautiful mask of saying, yeah, 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 I'll do it. When in our heart of hearts
Yes.
also we know we won't.
Correct.
बट वो
Yeah.
तकलीफ तब आती है जब आप डायरेक्टली मुंह पे ना बोलते हो तो लोग बुरा मान जाते हैं और अगर आप
Right.
हाँ बोल के लटकाते रहते हो लटकाते रहते हो लटकाते रहते हो या तो वो जरूरत निकल जाती है द पर्सन डजंट नीड इट एनी मोर
Yeah.
और द पर्सन गेट्स इट फ्रॉम समवेयर एल्स
Someone else. Yeah.
yeah or invariably it moves down the priority list and or you've given it, you've done your homework and you've shared the data or information. And again, it's not as much just about information. I think it's also a lot to do with people crossing the line on asking personal questions.
Yes.
It's also a lot to do with individuals asking for stuff that they may think is their entitlement, but it might not be their entitlement.
Of course. Yeah.
Yeah. And therefore, I think the ability to say no, to my mind, is a skill that every individual should consciously learn and develop and harness. Because if you don't hone that skill, it could become difficult later on for you as an individual.
Absolutely, I do agree with that, given the fact that learning to say no is, essential in every, domain or every aspect of life. Because of course many times people do not just like to just turn down people just like that, and they accept things which they know they're not supposed to do, or things that they cannot do in the first place, but then they still say yes, in the hope that they might actually impress the opposite person. But then when the fact when the work is actually not done, that turns out to be much worse than it would have if they had said no in the first place.
Yeah.
So I definitely do agree with the fact that this entire thing of saying no is a skill in itself, and
Yeah.
people, it's high time people actually learn it.
And more importantly, it's not just about saying no. It is actually how do you say no without saying no? And I think
Yeah.
that is the real skill because the moment in your mind you have to say no.
Yeah.
But you also know that if upfront you go and say no, you may have a challenge. So
Yes.
therefore, how do you engage the other person in a conversation where you subtly bring out the no because of whatever reason you don't want to call it out plain simple in the face and you achieve your objective, you're being honest and at the same time plain straightforward. I think
Yeah.
that is very important. Many a times also, Nishad, what I've noticed is people find it very difficult to put their hand up to ask for help,
Yeah. Of course, this is
right?
there in just human beings.
It's just so difficult. So, for example, I may have told you, yes, I will give this to you by today 6 p.m.
Mm.
It's 5 p.m. I know there is no way on earth that I can give it to you by 6 p.m.
Yeah.
But we find it difficult to go back and say, you know what? I'm sorry, I told you 6. No, it will not be possible by 6 o'clock. I want to take a rain check. We
Mm.
don't do that. And therefore, what ends up happening is go back to the angle of saying yes. Every time you say yes, but you don't deliver, we need to realize that we lose credibility.
Yeah, the repercussions have to be understood.
Absolutely. And we lose credibility. And when we lose credibility, it is
Yes.
as good as being in a space where your word doesn't matter anymore. Because ये बोलता तो है, but करता तो कुछ
करता
नहीं.
नहीं है.
Exactly, exactly.
Hmm.
So I'll give you a classic example from my own life and my own leadership journey.
Mhm.
When
Yeah.
I was growing in my role and I moved from an assistant manager to a manager, of course, I got in a team that would report into me. And
Mhm.
whenever any team members would come in and ask for help, I could never say no. So what I would do was I would say, yes, please come. I would sit them down. I would answer their queries. I would explain to them whatever help they needed.
Mhm.
And of course, they went back very happy that, we came to Sahil. Immediately, he gave us solutions. He made us think, reflect. We went back, solved. And then when I sat back and I reflected on this aspect of mine, I realized that my own productivity or my own tasks or my own aspects or work that I was focusing on used to take a back seat. And
Mm, of
this
course.
used to happen invariably because when I was in the middle of a chain of thought or I was in the middle of executing something, I would put it on hold, thinking, "Arey, ye to mera kaam hai. I have to do it on my own. I can
Mhm.
even do it later. But the team needs help or someone in the team needs help. Let me go and help them because their work should not get stuck because of me." That was my thought process. Two things happened because of that. Number one, the team knew that I was absolutely approachable. For the smallest of things they got stuck, they would immediately come to me, get a quick fix, and go
Mhm.
back.
So that was a good aspect of it.
That's the way you want to look at it. Either it was the good or it was the bad, and I'll give you both sides of it, right?
Okay.
So I was approachable, they got a solution, they quickly went,
Mhm.
they did their work. But in the bargain, my work suffered, and
Yeah.
obviously my attention to come back to really look at what I was doing got compromised in that moment.
Yeah.
Moving forward, I realized that I would actually go back and tell my team, you know what? No, I'm busy. I started doing that. And then I
Mhm.
realized that this absolute approach of saying no in the face, not right now, I'm busy, also didn't work because they went back and they got stuck until I got free. They were
Mhm.
actually twiddling their thumbs.
Okay.
All right. So
Understood. Yeah.
it put them in a situation where they actually got stuck. And
Yeah.
then over the years, I realized the best thing to do in your endeavor to help others
Hmm.
is to empower them.
Yeah.
And in the
Correct.
process of empowering them, what I did
Mhm.
was I said, fantastic. You have a problem.
Mhm.
Have you done an RCA, a root cause analysis of why the problem has occurred, what you can do? Can you solve it? Can't you not solve it? Have you
Mhm.
asked yourself the 4 or 5 questions that I always ask when you come to me? So many a times they would come to me and I would ask them, have you examined 1, 2, 3, 4, 5? They wouldn't. They would go check the answers. They would get the answer. They would solve for it. So now the structure is very well set. They exactly know that if they're going to come to Sahil, Sahil is going to ask 5 questions.
So they solve it previously itself before
Absolutely.
coming to you.
So what they do is they don't get a no. They don't need to come to me because when they
Yeah.
find the answers to those 4 or 5 questions, many a times their problems get solved. So
Correct.
what I've ended up doing over these years through learning is that I've empowered the team to actually sit back and reflect on what is it that they need to do.
Mm-hmm.
How do they empower themselves by going back to their work? At the
Mm.
same time, while I'm always available, and again, you said that was a pro earlier. Now I'll give you the
Yeah.
con of that. Now they know that Sahil is not always available. Because if they
Yeah.
come to me, my first question to them is, if I'm in the middle of something,
Mhm.
is it life or death? And if it
Oh,
is not life or death, and again, here is the no, they go back and they try and solve for it. And by the time I intentionally hold on to make myself available, they have already solved for it. And do you see that is where magic happens? Because when
yes.
you
I
know
got
that for the
it.
smallest of things, I can go back to my seniors or my boss, it becomes very easy to rely on your seniors or your boss.
Yes,
And when
absolutely. Yeah.
intentionally I have kept myself as approachable but not available all the time, they know they need to find the answers themselves.
That actually reduces the dependency on you as well.
Absolutely, not just reduce their dependency on me, it also makes them feel a lot more empowered because they know that they can find solutions. They know that they can implement those solutions because the guardrails are well defined.
Got it. Got it.
And
Yeah.
that is the power of saying, no, I'm not available.
Okay, I understood that.
You
Yeah,
see how
that's a
saying
really
no can
great point.
also be beneficial.
Yes. Yes, it can definitely help the employees and the people to actually understand their work more better, do it, and then get empowered in the in
Yeah.
the process as well.
Because in the short run, they were
Mhm.
actually taken aback to say, earlier we would reach out to Sahil and for everything he would leave his work and he would help us. Now
Yeah.
Sahil is saying, no, I'm not available. I'm not available. But everything is time bound, so they need to solve for it. And they have been
Correct.
empowered with the tools to solve for it. So it forces them also to think. It forces them to take decisions. It forces them to think on their feet and come up with solutions. And
Mhm.
then when they are not sure, they have that 5% window to ping me and say, we are going ahead with this. Hope, okay. And I say, okay, because I know they're doing the right thing.
Talking about this is obviously in a leadership role and everything, but what about the people who are in a as I previously said, in a junior level? Okay, so for example, if there is a person, okay, he is a HR executive again. All right, so this, or say a HR intern for that matter, because there are a lot of interns also coming up these days, irrespective of the background and the educational front that they are from. So if a HR intern has a certain, just a question or a query from some other, person from the company itself, and what if that person actually says yes to it, but then doesn't realize later that he cannot actually furnish that information? What happens then? How can that person actually tackle that situation? Because yeah, we are talking about how to say no, but then what happens if we have already told yes to a certain thing, but then the person cannot deliver it?
So again, this is a hypothetical question. And of course,
Yes.
based on the facts of the case, you will decide whether you can exercise your liberty to turn a yes into a no or keep a yes a yes. But having said that, I think you should always create a culture
Mhm.
where people are allowed to fail without setting them up for failure. Because what will happen is that if you let an intern get bogged down by the fact of what the intern can say or not say, and for everything that person has to come and ask you, then you're not letting that person use his or her brain.
Correct.
And
Yeah.
therefore, what you say is in the induction period, when any person joins an organization, you have to set certain guardrails,
Mhm.
saying at your level, in your role, you have this level of empowerment. You can take
Okay.
these decisions.
Mhm.
These things you need to consult. And these are the aspects where you need to take explicit approval.
There has
And
to be
these
a
are the
transparency
aspects
in
where,
the rules.
yeah, absolutely. So here is where you decide and just inform me. These are the aspects where you need to consult me and take my view and then go ahead. And these are the aspects without my approval, nothing should move. And I think when you define these aspects very clearly in terms of broad functioning, not everything to the T, but broad level of functioning, the mind gets oriented to say, yes, this is where I am empowered. This is where I need to consult, and this is beyond my pay grade. And therefore, I should upward escalate or upward delegate so that the people who are relevant, who can take those decisions, can actually do that. Because many a times, as you rightly said, if someone goes and says yes, what's the other person going to say? Are, but your team member told me that he'll send this, and now you're saying
Yeah.
you can't share it with me. That's not
Yeah.
fair. This is wrong. Why did your team member say yes?
Yeah.
Therefore, those are difficult situations to be in. So it's always better whenever you're not sure, check.
Taking I think a 10-minute or a 15-minute break to actually tell them, I'll get back to you like you earlier said, and then coming up with whatever answer. I think it's also possible without directly saying no. We can just let that person itself, I mean themselves, actually reflect on whether they actually need the information or not, or whether they're entitled to receive that information or not. So that the without actually saying directly no, they will realize themselves that they are not supposed to be receiving that details, and they understand that situation, and then they just step back.
And I think,
So
Nishant, what is also very important is this ability to have a dialogue. I think many times it's a monologue. I need this. Send it to me. And this person will say, no, but I can't send it to you. Which is very, very different from actually saying, okay, you need this. Can you help me understand better? Why do you need this? The person will explain. Okay, now you've received it. What will you do with this? How is this going to help you? And then when you understand the end objective, many a times we will realize that you may not even need that information to achieve the end objective because you've thought
correct.
very differently.
Right,
And
right.
the same point that you're making, right?
Yeah.
If you can achieve the end goal without going through that process
Yeah.
and going through another way, the individual is happy. You are serving your purpose of not really sharing those details, and you achieve the objective. It's a
Yeah.
classic case. Like many a times in consulting, how it really works is that we need to look at on every project, are we making a profit or not? And therefore, in consulting, as you know, there is no plant and machinery, it's only human
Yeah.
cost, right? Which
Yeah.
is salary cost. And
Yeah.
when you look at gross profits on a particular project, you might not necessarily need to have the exact cost of every individual, which is each individual person's salary.
Salary.
You can
Yeah.
actually look at the average salary of the people at that level to look at your entire team cost. That serves
Correct.
the purpose. I don't
Yeah.
need to know Nishad's salary or Sahil's salary. I can say, okay, all assistant managers or all managers or all senior managers in the team, give me the average salary. And that serves
Correct.
my purpose when I look at computation.
How does consulting actually, bring the power or bring the entire notion of saying no? Because, of course, consulting is a completely different domain and everything. But then, how does this factor affect consulting and everything?
I think, see, consulting is typically a lot of interaction working very closely with clients.
Correct.
And here is where I would like to bring in the element of relationships that play a very, very important role. You got to understand who is the person sitting on the other side of the table. There are a lot of people who say, tell me on my face this is not possible, I will respect you.
Oh, okay.
There are a lot of people like that. And I have personally interacted with a lot of people who really appreciate if you're very honest, very candid with them, rather than saying, ha, kar lenge, ho jayega, and then you don't end up turning it around.
Yeah. We'll try to do it or
We'll
something.
try to do it, right? So there are a lot of people who appreciate candidness and honesty right in the beginning to say, sorry, no, this is out of scope, or this won't happen, or for this, there will be an extra kind of way in which we need to look at it, and all of those things. Then there are also others who like to go with the flow, and therefore you say yes, and we'll figure it out as we move ahead, right? And then there are others who just don't like to listen to a no.
Yeah.
So whatever you may say, they don't want to hear a no because they've never heard a no in their life. And therefore, navigating those people are the most difficult people because you got to say yes and you got to deliver in a manner in which the yes sounds and feels like the yes has been achieved, even though in black and white it may not have been achieved in entirety.
So when we're talking about HR, and given the fact that you are in this department for a lot of years now, what does HR actually means to you in itself?
No, I think it's a powerhouse. It's a powerhouse because it has a lot of responsibility that is bestowed upon it, right? And therefore, with a lot of responsibility comes also in various shades a lot of power. And therefore,
True.
you need to manage that power really well. Because if you let the power overpower you, then it won't really work. It just doesn't work.
Absolutely, yeah.
And therefore, I think HR to me is an opportunity to make a difference as you touch the lives of all your employees and the communities that you serve. It is a lot of responsibility.
Mm-hmm.
And in the process of fulfilling those responsibilities, there may be a number of times when you would have to say no.
Yes, of course.
Yeah. So it's better to be honest there. For that moment, you may be disliked. For that moment, you may be put in bad light for saying no. But if you're being honest to your job, eventually people will respect you for what you are and for what you did.
And with it, we come to the end of our session. Thank you so much for joining us on this. And I had honestly a very great conversation with you. It was really fun having this with you. And I'm sure our audience will, learn a lot from this conversation. So thank you so much again for that.
Thank you, Nishat. Wish you and the team all the very best.